In this video, I want to show you how to make a histogram with some data using Google Sheets. Okay, so we've got some data here. This is student social media use, and we've got data from 12 middle school students and 12 upper school students, and this is how many times a day they check social media. And we've calculated the mean, median mode, and standard deviation of the data, but now we want to make a graph with histogram. First, though, I want to kind of clean up the data table and make it not quite so cluttered and look a little better that you might want to actually present in a lab or on a science fair project. So first off, why don't we go ahead and number the students? So remember, if we go 1 and 2, we could keep doing that, but I can just highlight those two, and then this little blue box in the corner, I can drag that down, and I can number all my students. Okay. Also, I'd like to make my data table all the cells visible. So if I go up here to the borders and I go to all borders, now I have all of them visible. Notice my titles in here don't fit in the cells. They're going out of the cells. So what I'd like to do with those three is over here, instead of having the text go out of the cell, I'd like to wrap it within the cell. And now I've got those labels staying within the cell, and it looks a little cleaner. I can also center my data and do anything like that. Okay. Since we're making a histogram, the histogram is going to basically show the number of students at each of the data points. So how many students checked 4 times, how many checked 5 times, 6 times. You can see my lowest number is 4 and my highest number is 14. So we're going to have a graph that goes through from 4 to 14. And just so that I can kind of eyeball it a little bit better, I'd like to have the Google Sheets sort my data and put it in from lowest to highest, arrange it from lowest to highest. So I've highlighted all the actual data points, not my mean, median, mode, or any of that. And if I go to data, I want to sort, actually I'm going to do this one at a time. I'm going to sort first column B, go up to data, and I'm going to, go up to data again, and I'm going to sort the range. I'm not going to sort the sheet. If I sort the sheet, it's going to sort everything in that entire column, but just the range I've highlighted from A to Z. And A to Z is the same as 1 to 10, from first to last. Okay, so if I do that, you can see I've got 5s, 6s, 7s, and so forth. And you can see my 2 7s. That's why the median mode is 7. If I do the same thing with my upper school data, sort range, column C, A to C, I'm going to get the same thing. Okay, so now I can kind of see I have 1 4, I have 2 5s, and I can kind of see how my data is arranged and what my histogram should look like, right? So it's always nice to have your data arranged in a way that's a little bit easier to kind of look at. And since we want to do that, what I want to do now is I want to figure out how many, since the histogram is going to show how many 4s are in each group, how many 5s, how many 6s, right? I want to create another table over here, and I'm going to start first with each of those values. So 4 was my lowest value, right? And then I have a 5, okay? And again, instead of typing all the way through 14, I can just drag down and go all the way to 14. I didn't count. There we go, 14. Okay, so now I want to know how many middle school students checked 4 times. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and I'm also going to do something else. Let me just show you. I want to keep my titles here. So I want this to be the same as this. Okay. And if I do that, I just go equals, and then I highlight this box, and it basically copies this box right there, okay? And I also want this one to be the same and this one to be the same, so it'll follow and say, do those exact same. Notice it didn't format them the way that I formatted them here, so I've got to go back and I've got to do that by wrapping them like that, okay? So now, with my middle school students, I have to say, okay, if there's a 4 in my data set, right, I want you to count it, each 4, okay? So I'm going to use a count function. So I'm going to go equals, which means I want it to count something, count, C-O-U-N-T, if, all together, count if, and you can see it's recognized it there. And then I'm going to put in, notice it says from across the range. So I'm going to put the range of my data, and then I'm going to put the number. Okay, so I'm going to put parentheses. The range is over here in my middle school. It's all these numbers. Okay. And then I'm going to put a comma, and I'm going to say the number 4. So notice in this cell I have the number 4 type. So I'm just going to set that. So E2 is 4, close parentheses. Okay, and notice it says 0. Well, that's correct. I don't have any 4s in this group. Okay. One other thing I need to do though before I go ahead is what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing for each one of these, but I want to count the exact same set of data. I don't want, as I go down to the next one, for my data set to move down 1. So I'm going to put a $sign in front of my 2 and in front of, oops, not that one, $sign, that one, in front of my 2 and in front of my 13. And that's going to keep my B's all in that 2 to 13 range. So $signs just hold that there. Okay, so that's kind of important, and you'll see why in a minute. So I should still have 0, okay? And now all I need to do for this one is drag it down, and for each one of these, it should do the same. So 5, yeah, look, I have 2 5s, that's correct. 6, 3, yep, so I can see that that's worked out correctly. That's why it's nice to have these in numerical order, so I can double check, okay? All right, next thing I want to do is I want to do that with my upper school students. So I want to come over here and drag this over, okay? And you'll notice it says 0, okay? And notice, oh, there is 1 4 there, so it should say 1. So if I click on this, notice it's changed to C2 to C13, which is correct. I'm in the C columns, 2 to 13. But notice, since I shifted over, it shifted over to this value, F2, not E2. So I just need to make sure I keep this value as E2. And what I could have done is I could have put a $sign in front of that E, and then it would have told me to keep that, keep it on this column and not shift over. So when I shift this one. Okay, now if I put it in now, let's see what it has. It has 1. Okay, yeah, because there's 1 4. Okay, so that's good. And now I want it to basically do the same thing for each of my values 5 through 14. So let's see if it did it. Okay, so 1 5, 2 6s. Yep, that looks like it's doing it correct. Okay, and now again, I want to make my data table look pretty, so I want to highlight them and put my borders on, all borders. Okay, all right. So now I want to create a histogram. So what I have here is I have, for each of these values, I have this number of students that have that value. So for checking social media 4 times, 0 middle schoolers, 1 upper school. 5 times, 2 and 1. So all I need to do now is highlight all my data, okay, and including my labels, including my titles up here, okay, and then I go to Insert, and then I go to Chart, and there we go. If you do the, make sure you're on the column chart, okay, because a histogram is a form of column chart. But notice it already knew that my first column was the numbers, right, the number of times checking social media. And then the, in this case, middle school students are blue, upper school students are red, so I got my key up here. I could label this axis, right? So if I went over to Customize and label axes, I could label that axis as well to say, you know, number of students, so that I have both my axes labeled. But I have a nice histogram chart here for my data. Okay, and that is a wrap.